Good morning and welcome to another Fast Tracks webinar. This is a weekly event we do every Friday at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, where we cover various topics of the Fast Track software. You can see these events if you go to our website, goftx.com, choose the FTx Lifeline, scroll down about halfway down the page and choose the webinar link. This will show you a list of all of our webinars we've done previously with the option to view the recordings, sign up for the newsletter, and at the bottom, sign up for the newer webinars that are scheduled out in the future. Today, we're going to be going over verifying invoices in the retail software. So what exactly is invoice verification? Well, in the Fast Track system, bringing in inventory is receiving. You're receiving an invoice. And a lot of times that can be done at corporate, where corporate enters the invoice in, sends that invoice down to the store, and the quantities are applied at the store and then sent back up to corporate. The store can enter an invoice themselves, or you could receive via EDI. There's a variety of ways to enter those. The one common thing with those methods would be that you're either keying those in or receiving it electronically, but you're not physically verifying the product. So there could be a discrepancy that you are unaware of. The vendor could have sent something that was either short or over, and the inventory would then be off. The invoice verification process will actually double check by physically expecting you to scan the product and compare that value to what the invoice actually says. So to do that, we go to the inventory module within Director. We would choose the receiving option at the top, and this lists all of our previous invoices. Now I've got some invoices here that are not applied. So we're going to open this up, and I'm going to see that I've got some jewel items here. Let's say that I received this via EDI. I can apply this to my inventory by choosing that Apply button. And my inventory quantities are updated. Now, I would want to verify that in some way to make sure that, yes, that quantity that I just applied to my inventory is indeed correct. And to do that, you have to utilize either the Windows handheld or the Android handheld. And there's an invoice verification module within those. So let me show you what that looks like. Let me get connected to a handheld here. So this is the FTx handheld application on the Android side. We're going to be looking at the Android side first. So I've already got the app opened. I'm going to log in. And from this screen, I'm going to choose the Receiving Verify option. So I'll choose that Receiving Verify option, and then I'm presented with this screen. This is basically saying there's no invoices that are in progress of verification. So if I want to begin a new invoice verification, I just need to choose that red plus button. So I'll choose that. I'll choose my vendor, and then we can see there's an invoice, the one I just now applied, that is ready to be started. So I'll choose that, and then I'm now started the invoice verification process. Now I'm in the portrait mode. If I flip to the landscape mode, this will then show on the right column what's expected to be on that invoice and counted. So to count, I can either use the Android camera or I can use a barcode scanner. So I'm going to go ahead and choose and scan some items here. We can see that it's the invoiced quantity is 5. The actual quantity, that's going to be what I'm physically counting. So if I choose 5, that means that there's no variance. I'll choose the next one. It's expecting 3. Let's go ahead and put that as 3 as well. Let's see the next one. Let's say this is 5. I'm going to make a variance here. I'm going to choose 4. We'll do the next one. That's expecting 7. We'll go ahead and do 7. And I have one more, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. And we'll cancel. So we can see that I have one more item that I've not scanned, I've not verified. So we're going to leave it that way because I want to show you what happens. So let's go ahead and we're going to go to the little gear head in the bottom right corner, that little red gear head. We're going to send invoice to corporate. It's going to ask, are we certain we want to do this, with a little countdown, and it's going to show you the variance items that either weren't scanned, period, or have a variance when compared to what is supposed to be on that invoice. So I'm going to go ahead and choose send. And we're now going to go to close this, and we're going to go to our verified invoices. And we can see there's that invoice verification, invoice number 4. So whenever we want to view this, we can either double click on that or we can choose view. And this will show all of those items. Now we can see here that there's an order quantity, which is what the purchase order would have had on that when sending it into the vendor. There's the invoice quantity, which is what was actually applied to inventory originally on that invoice, whether that be via EDI or corporate pushing that down or manually applying that. And then the verified quantity. That's going to be what we just scanned on that handheld, what we just confirmed that we actually physically have. The difference will be the difference between the verified quantity and the invoice quantity. So we can see that that item we didn't scan has a variance of 4, and that one we intentionally left 1 off of has a variance of 1. Now notice that on this item here doesn't show as scanned. It's because we never scanned that item. The verified also isn't there. So if I would have actually just manually entered that item and not scanned it, then the verified would have been there, but the scanned wouldn't have. There's a difference in manually entering the item versus actually scanning the item. The system's going to keep track of that. So let's say that this is a true account. We verified what we physically have. There's an option here to create adjustment invoice. What this will do is we're going to choose yes to apply that. It's going to create an invoice adjustment. And that adjustment is going to be on these 2 items, those variances. That way we can fix the inventory issue that we would have run into otherwise if we didn't do this verification. To see that, we'll go ahead and close this out. We'll go back to our previous invoices. We will refresh that. And then we see there's that 4_ADJ, invoice 4 adjustment. Whenever we open this up, we can see there's those 2 items that had a variance. And to resolve our inventory issue, we can simply apply that. And then those items that we were shorted on this invoice will now, that were originally applied on that invoice, this will fix the inventory. This is a fantastic way to resolve those inventory issues before you do a cycle count. Because the last thing you want to do is do a cycle count and see that you're short and wondering where those shortages come from. So we just applied that. Our inventory is now fixed. Let's go back to that verified invoices. Now notice that's gone. It's no longer shown here. That's because it's been applied. So if I do the show applied and refresh, we can see there's that invoice that we had just done. By default, when you come into this screen, it's going to show just invoice verifications that have been started but not finished. I can see the ones that have been applied by choosing that checkbox and refreshing it, and that'll show the one that we just done. Notice the review checkbox isn't done yet. It's not checked. To review that, we simply, on this screen here, choose that review checkbox, and that will then flag that as this is a reviewed invoice verification. This is generally done at corporate. Notice it's gone now from this screen. The only way to get that to show up is if I check the show reviewed and then refresh, and then I will see invoices that have been verified, applied, and reviewed. If I do just one or the other, then it's not going to show up. You have to have them meeting all the criteria. If I want to see one that has been no variance and applied and reviewed, I can do that. And I can see that there are some invoices here that had no variance. So let's do the next area. Let's do the Windows handheld. So we're going to go to our invoices and we're going to apply a new one. Let's do invoice number 5. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to apply that. And we will go to the Windows device here. That should be loading up. Yep, there we go. So we now have the Windows application open on either the Honeywell or the Unitex. To do an invoice verification, after we log in, we will choose the receiving option. And then once this loads, we'll then choose the option for invoice verification. First, we have to log in. And we do verify an invoice. Now we also have the option to resume an unfinished verification, but we don't have one that's unfinished right now. We're going to choose the continue option. There's our vendor we're choosing. We're going to do invoice number 5. And then at this point, we either scan or enter the UPCs. Now, remember, if we enter the UPC manually, that's not the same as scanning. So that's going to be flagged incorrectly on the verification form. We want to scan. So we're going to scan one here. We're going to make sure that this one matches identically. So there's our expected quantity. We're going to receive 5 here. There's our next one. There's one more. And there's the last one. So we can see that there's now 0 items left to be verified. That little counting integer down here started at 5 and it went down to 0 because we've scanned everything. So next, whenever we're done, we'll choose the options and we'll choose the save and send. It's going to prompt us, do we want to save and send to corporate? We'll choose yes. We'll get that confirmation. And then we can close out of this and we can go back to the invoice verification screen. We'll refresh this and we can see that there's that invoice we had just verified. And notice it's the only one that has not been applied or reviewed. So we're going to open that up. And we can see here that everything is scanned. The scan time and everything matches. There's no difference. Now, notice whenever there's no difference here, there's not a create adjustment invoice option. It's just flag is verified. And that's literally all you have to do. You just use the flag is verified. And that will then flag that invoice as complete and verified. There's no adjustment invoice needed to be created. To review that, once again, we'll just choose that checkbox to show applied. There's that one single invoice. We'll open that back up. Corporate will then review this, choose the checkbox, and then it will be gone. And that invoice verification is complete. So that's the process of utilizing the invoice verification. As I said at the beginning of this webinar, it's a fantastic way to make sure that what the vendor says they sent you, whether it be what corporate keyed in, what the store manually keyed in, or what was received via EDI, this is a way to physically account for all of those items and make sure that there's no invoice differences from what was said to be received versus what was actually received. I hope everybody's learned something today. Once again, you can see all of these webinars if you go to our website. It is goftx.com. Choose the FTx Lifeline tab at the top of the screen. Scroll down about halfway down that page and choose the webinars option. And this screen will let you see both this webinar, its recording, all the previous webinars recordings, and then the upcoming webinars. If you have any feedback or questions, feel free to contact us at websupport@fasttrackspos.com, or if you have any suggestions or feedback on the webinar, let us know at info@goftx.com. I thank you and hope to see you next week.